All right. Well, I have 11 o'clock. Kim, are you ready?
Yes,
Okay, good.
as I'll ever be.
I have a little introduction before we get to our session, if you don't mind. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody to the session. And before turning to the topic at hand, I'd like to thank everyone who helped organize this event, especially Tony Adams, the organizer par excellence. I mean, what would we do without Tony? And I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to be here with us today. I think these international gatherings are more important today than ever, given the chaotic state of the world and the unpredictability of some of our leaders, unfortunately, especially those in the US. We, the people, must keep talking to each other. I think that autoethnography is especially important in these trying times. We need opportunities to tell our stories, get feedback, and find each other with similar and divergent experiences. We need to share our joys, love, fears, and trauma, as you all have been doing so beautifully here the last 2 days. Your stories are powerful and evocative about identity issues, your experiences in Ukraine, intergenerational traumas such as Japanese internment camps, loss of your home in the fires of LA, grief and loss and disappointments, along with care and love of all kinds. Autoethnography, as we like to say, is not just a method or a story. It is a community of support and a way of life. We are here for you. Let's keep talking. And with that, let's turn to this session honoring Kim Etherington. Kim and I have decided to do this session as an interactive interview. So I have a set of questions for Kim, and then after she answers each one, I'm going to talk about how my life compares to hers in retirement. So our focus will be on retirement and what we are calling aftercare, care for ourselves and others after our university careers. So Kim, will you first position your career for us before we turn to retirement?
Okay, well, I'd just like to thank you very much for honoring me in this way and inviting me to meet this amazing community of autoethnographers and narrative inquirers. I don't get out much these days, I'm afraid, so it's quite exciting to be in such an international gathering. My career, I was thinking about this word career earlier and thought, I don't really think I thought in terms of career. I trained as an occupational therapist from the age of 18 to 21, which was in 1958 to 61. And in those days, well, I got married a year after qualifying. So I actually only worked full time for a year. Then I started having children. And so my career was very much part time, fitting around the children. And my husband, supporting my husband, who was doing a PhD in biochemistry. And that's the way my career was for many, many years. I then went into working in various kinds of part-time roles when the children were at school, in geriatric hospitals, orthopedic hospitals. I worked for 8 years in a community for autistic people. I worked in the community as an occupational therapist, visiting disabled people in their own homes. And then I came to my mid to second half of my 40s, and I discovered there was a counselling course at the local university, the first one of its kind. When I say local, we lived right in the country, so it was 25 miles away. I know that's not a long way in American terms, but in England, that's a little bit, it's a little bit further. So off I went to study to be a counsellor, which I thought would be a great lark, with my friend who had been living in the same village for a long time and both bringing the children up. So I trained first as a counsellor at the University of Bristol, and qualified in 1949. No, sorry, not 49. I was 49. So I didn't go to university until I was 47, because you don't go to university. Well, you didn't in those days go to university to be an occupational therapist. It was a training course, a bit like a teacher training course in those days. So I entered into the hallowed halls of the Wills Building, that magnificent building at the top of Park Street in Bristol, feeling very intimidated and ignorant and like a fish out of water. That place became my home. It was where I learned to grow. It's a place that grew me. I did a master's in counselling supervision and training, and then I went on to do a PhD. It was actually not until 1955 that I had my first academic post at the age of 55. Sorry, not 1955. I was 55. I don't do maths very well. In 1995, yeah. So I was then employed to run a postgraduate diploma course for counsellors who wanted to work in GP surgeries in the National Health Service. And from there, I started teaching master's students, one of whom is here today. Hi, Sal. And then graduated to teaching PhD students. But I think the big difference between Carolyn and myself is that I was never a full-time academic, because I had continued to work in private practice with my own counselling practice alongside everything I did in academia. And in fact, my academic role was really only paid role between half a day a week and half a day a week to 2.5 days a week, always in that range. So I never had a full-time post. And I actually think that was a saving of my life, really, because the balance between practice and academia, where the academic side of me fed and informed my practitioner, and the questions from practice led to my research questions and developments. And then I started to publish, and the rest is to come. Will that do?
That does it, yes. And as Kim said, our careers have been very different, because once I started going to higher ed, I just kept going. I was just like narrowly directed right through academia, and so it was first William and Mary, and then I took 1 year off of academic training and participation to be a social worker after I was an undergraduate at William and Mary. But then I went right into PhD work at Stony Brook in New York, and went directly from there to my first job at University of South Florida in the sociology department. And then in 1995, I believe it was, I moved from sociology to the communication department, so that I could participate with Art Bachner, my partner, in a program that really emphasized narrative and autoethnography and qualitative work. And I was there until I retired in 2018. What year did you retire?
2010.
2010, so before I did. So that was just a very narrowly focused career on my part, but a very good one for me.
Yeah.
So the second question is then to turn to our life after retirement, and how the academic pursuit continues, or what do you do in retirement? Do you just keep doing what you were doing, or how is it different?
Well, some, I would say. Having already a freelance practice, it wasn't difficult for me to expand my website to include master's and doctoral dissertation for people who were interested in autoethnography and narrative. And it's a shame, but you know, a lot of people who came, well, people tended to come to me via my writing and my work. But you know, they should have been getting the right sort of supervision for whatever methodology they chose at the university, where they were paying quite a lot of high fees. But that wasn't the case. And some institutions actually acknowledged that by saying that they would pay a certain portion of my fees themselves for the students that they couldn't provide the correct supervision for. But that was very few and far between. Mostly people paid themselves. I never offered myself as a supervisor, which is the role, well, that's the sort of official name of the role that we offered in the university at that time, or advisor. But what I did was to accompany somebody for as much time as they wanted to on that journey towards their degree. And sometimes people would come monthly, people would come sometimes when they needed to. Sometimes they just want me to read something or just discuss something with them. So I was just there as a kind of supportive friend, if you like. But so I did that same kind of work, which of course I did at the university, and I loved that. But of course, because I had my own private therapeutic practice, I continued to do that. And when I retired from university, I actually started training again in different modalities because I wanted to do something new. And so I'm still now working with clients 2 days a week. I still now support students who ask me to do that, although I'm less inclined to do that now than I used to be. The other side of using my academic self, if you like, I became involved in an organization called Lapidus, which is an organization concerned with writing for well-being. They've been going since 1996 as an arts and health community. It developed out of that back in 1996. So when I joined them, I didn't know about them actually. People don't know about them. So I'm telling you, they're a great organization for people who want to look at writing and well-being. But I was invited to do a keynote at one of their conferences, and I spent the weekend with them, and they were such a great crowd of people, and they were doing such interesting things. And I went to some of the workshops. I decided I wanted to be one of them, so I signed up, but I was a silent member until I retired. And then with a small group of people, we began to develop a research journal. And they were not a research-minded group. So my work really has been to develop that as research director. And I've really enjoyed that, bringing creative autoethnography and narrative research, arts-based research to an organization who are based on creativity but didn't know about. They all thought that, you know, research was about filling in tick boxes and drawing graphs and such like. So it's been really lovely to invite them into that world. And we have now half of the membership belong to a community that we call Lapidus Living Research Community, which meets once a month with invited speakers. And everybody's terribly interested in research now. So
Good, thanks. Just
I've
one
used
sec, let me.
I've used my academic life, but in a completely different arena. And that's been very fruitful and really enjoyable.
Great, great. Thank you. Well, I think one of the nice things about academia is when you retire, you can keep doing really as much of it as you want to keep doing, which is not true in other occupations where when you quit, you quit. You just have to start a new life. I feel like in some ways I'm still a full-time academic. I mean, I still go to my desk every day, and so does Art. And our days are structured quite a bit the same as they were when we were university professors, except that we don't have to go to the university and we don't teach classes per se, but we pick up workshops and we're always reviewing books and papers and doing our own writing and communicating with other academics, and I would not want to give that up. Now I don't spend as many hours doing it now as I did before. I like to really take my mornings off, and I like to get up and do other things during the morning. And that wasn't true when I was in the academy, because I had to get up and go teach my classes or prepare my classes if I wasn't doing research that day. So in that way, it's different. But I stay busy. I still feel very passionate about the kind of work that I do. And my social world really consists so much of colleagues and former graduate students. And so I am in constant contact with them, whether on Facebook or email or phone or visitors or whatever. And so my life is still very much engaged with academic work, but not so much the university. And sometimes I say, well, I still work, I still do all this work, I just don't get paid most of the time. But that's okay, thankfully. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad to be able to continue to participate. And for you, you had two careers that you could move in and out of, which is really nice.
Yeah. It has been, and I agree with you. It is very much more about you do however much of it that really you want to do. And that, I mean, I have published papers, as you have done, in retirement and other things as well. So only because I want to, but I have to say, I must admit, I've always just done that kind of thing because I want to, because it feels really important to me to spread the word, to sort of like honoring participants, to tell their story to the public, or as far as you can. Yeah, and I don't do much of that now, but if I do it, it's because I really want to and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And I was interested in your participation and passion for Lapidus, because
Yeah,
I think that's wonderful. And I have the same kind of passion for IANI and, the kind of work that we're doing here. And that's been an interesting move from a focus on my department university life to really focus on this organization that's much bigger and pulls in more people from different parts of the world.
yeah,
And so I think in some ways I took my energy that I devoted to a department and moved it here, as well
yeah,
as the other realms. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences in how we're doing retirement. Let's talk about the other things that we do during retirement. How do we engage in aftercare for ourselves?
Well, I think the biggest aftercare I have is my weekly therapy, which has kind of saved my life for many, many years. As a therapist, I think it's really important that we carry on having that kind of support ourselves. Um, and it doesn't feel like, I do it because I've got problems. It's more I do it because it's part of my life. You talk about living an autoethnographic life. I think about doing a therapeutic life.
Oh, that's good.
But the other great part of my life is taken up with grandchildren. I have 6 grandchildren, 2 of whom live in North Carolina, and I don't get to see enough. And I have 4 grown in their 20s other grandchildren who, it's very nice because they're kind of beginning to treat me like the elderly grandmother, who one of them's taking me to the theatre soon, for a day out, which was my Christmas present from him. He lives in London, so, I have to go to London and have a day with him and meet his partner, his new partner. Well, she's not that new. I haven't met her yet. So, I mean, involving in their lives and seeing how they're developing, that takes up quite a lot of my mind and my heart. In COVID, I became an avid jigsaw player or puzzler. Only the very, very complicated ones, I have to say, that you know, you do the jigsaw. There's nothing like the picture on the box. I didn't even know there were such things, but that's something else I've enjoyed doing. A lot of what I do is talking to writers and poets from Lapidus, being in groups. That's also part of my social life. They had an away day of the board last weekend, and they all came here, and that was so lovely for me because, you know, I'm in the middle of the country and it's a long way for people to come, but it was so nice having people in the flesh. And then I have my special person in my life who is called Rosie, who is my adorable cat, and I just don't know where I'd be without her. I have been a major carer until quite recently. We moved to this area because my husband needed some more care than I could give him on my own from Bristol, which was a bit heartbreaking because Bristol was very much my place, and very culturally exciting. I've moved to the middle of nowhere, to a small country town, to be near one of our sons who does give me lots of help. And that's since 2014 we came here. There's been a gradual deterioration, and I have become more and more of a carer. But in the end of last year, my husband went into permanent care, and that's been a very difficult transition. But actually, he's settling. He's in a really good place. He's beginning to get back a lot of his old sparkle, entertains a lot of the other people in there. Still got a very good mind, even though his body's falling apart. But and for me, it's been finding myself again, living on my own for the first time after 62 years of marriage. That's been quite a journey. And I go to a retreat center in Spain twice a year where I do all sorts of crazy things, different courses, sometimes just being on my own and spending the day wandering around and writing things. So lots of things, really. It's quite busy, this business of retirement.
Isn't it? Yes. Yeah, I often say to Art, how did we ever have time to go to a job? Because really, every day, and in fact, it's a little too busy for my taste. Every day we get up, we have various appointments and things that have to be done. Uh, you know, we have two homes, so we're constantly doing home maintenance. And 4 years ago, we moved in Florida to a new home, and our goal was to downsize, smaller home, no upstairs, no big garden. Well, we failed downsizing 101 because we moved to this bigger house with a much bigger yard that demands a lot of care. And for the most part, I love taking care of the yard. I mean, nothing gives me more joy than getting up and going out in the morning and looking at each plant and each flower and thinking about what needs to be done. So that takes a lot, really a lot of our time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. And also I'm trying to spend more time with friends. I'm hoping to come and visit you, for example, but because it seems like for me, seeing people rather than places is more important at this point in my life. And I haven't had the caregiving that you have had, but you know, I've had two siblings who have died in the last couple of years, and I was very involved in decision making and doing what I could to help take care of them and their families. Um, and you know, at one point I thought, you know, I might like to do something like hospice care. And then I decided, no, I just want to be there for the people in my life. that's the way I want to spend my time. So, and then I want to spend time having fun and eating good food and playing with my two little puppies. One is 1 year old and one is 5 years old, and they take a lot of training and a lot of care. I think much more so than a cat, but I may be wrong since I haven't had a cat for 50 years. Um, but life just kind of, oh, and then there are doctor's appointments, which seem to increase as you get older. You have a specialist for everything. Um, and physical therapy. I did just have a knee replacement, so I've spent a lot of time exercising every day and trying to be patient in recovery and doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but not overdoing it. So, life just happens. And whenever I find myself complaining, which is not very often, thankfully, I just say, I'm really glad my life is so full and that there are so many people in it, and people still want me to do things and read things and write things, and they want to talk to me about their problems. And, so that's a good life, really.
Yeah. Yes. It's good to feel. I had an email the other day from somebody who made my day. Well, you get these too, I'm sure, but when somebody writes and says, I just want to say how much it meant to me to read so and so, and it was like 25 years ago, and I'd forgotten about it. And it's really lovely to know it's still useful.
It is. Yeah, no, that's a real thrill still,
Yeah.
when you get a note saying something you wrote was helpful to people or touched something in them.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So how, given this period of life, and we've touched on some of this, but how do you make decisions and how do you feel about, life at this point in time?
I don't know. Um, I think I feel much better about life now than I did last year when I was a full-time carer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, I read a poem actually by Rosie Jackson that she wrote not long ago, and it exactly said how I feel. And of course now, because I'm nearly 85, I can't remember what it was, but it said something about loving life because I'd got to a place where I knew more about who I was. And um, and because I think I know more about who I am, uh, it does make decisions easier. Um, and also not just knowing who I am, but actually what I want and what I need and what I don't want. So that helps me make decisions. Um, but I think also, in discussion with others, having my grown-up family has made a big difference. I've been able to. I'm hopeless with numbers. I'm good with words, but I'm hopeless with numbers. As you will have noticed when I was struggling to remember how to add 50 to whatever it was. And our elder son is very good with all that sort of thing. So I've handed all the money stuff, all the adding up and the taking away over to him. Because he doesn't live here, he's 3 hours away. He does come every month, but he likes to know what he can do, and he can do that at a distance. So he pays the electricity bills, he negotiates with the electricity people about getting the best deal. He does all of that. And so I don't have to decide about those things that I really don't want to talk about and think about. But yeah, talking and discussing and getting advice, trying to learn, from other people's experiences too, and how they've come to decisions. But I think trusting myself a little more has really made the biggest difference.
So you've been retired a bit longer than I have.
15 years.
Yeah, so mine's since 2018. I think that's 6 years. In some ways, I feel like I'm still figuring out how to do retirement.
Yeah.
But I also realize it's a process. It's not like one day you decide I'm going to do it this way and then you keep doing it. You know, I like to kind of adapt as I go along and different things happen. Like we just got a contract to do a book together, Art and I, and you know, I was like a little hesitant. I wasn't sure I wanted that hanging over my head. You know, it was kind of nice not having a major project hanging over my head because my whole career, my whole academic career, I always had a major project that was in the background. And while I was doing my day-to-day work, I had to think, oh, I'm not doing that project. But I decided, okay, we can do this. It's important. But I do, you know, when I make decisions now, it is in the context of, you know, how much time do I have left? How many projects am I able to do? What do I want to spend my time doing? And if I decide to do one thing, it means I can't do something else. And so I'm very aware of that time element, and I want to make decisions wisely. I find it much easier to say no now. Not always, because you know when people I love come to me for something, it's hard to say no. But for the people I don't know, it is easier to say no. I don't want to do that right now because I want to do these other things.
Yeah.
So it's like it's all a process, and I love retirement. By the way, I do love. Even though I put myself on a schedule, I still have this sense of freedom. You know that I get up in the morning thinking I can do what I want to do as long as I make my appointments that I've scheduled. And that's a lovely feeling. So all
Yeah.
of you should look forward to being retired.
Yeah.
So let's look for just a moment, look back on our careers. What are you most proud of, and what do you wish you had done differently or had been different?
Oof. I don't know. It's hard to pin it down, isn't it? I think, you know, that when people talk about being proud of something, I get this image in my mind of sitting in the Great Hall at the University of Bristol when I was 55, boiling hot, with open-toed sandals on and my gown, my red gown, waiting to go up onto the stage and shake the hand of the, of the Chancellor for my PhD. And we weren't supposed to have open-toed sandals on for a start, but you know, hey, it was a hot day. But I can remember feeling a real pride. You know, I had barely scraped through school. Well, I say barely. You know, I'd just about done enough because I had a very difficult upbringing and I was not fully present most of the time at school. In fact, not physically present because I would bunk off around the lake and sit there and write poems and read, you know, to survive. But and I never, you know, I just never ever thought that one day I would be sitting in the Great Hall waiting to go up and pick up a PhD. So I do remember feeling really proud of myself on that occasion. That was a great moment.
Great.
What about you?
Well, it's kind of a package. I'm really proud of what's happened with autoethnography. It was just a thought in my mind back in the 80s, and I didn't know what to call it, but I just knew that there was something I thought needed to happen in scholarship, and which was to, you know, bring emotions in and bring your own experience in. And so seeing this wonderful symposium with all of these young people, you know, who are doing autoethnography, it really gives me a sense of pride. And especially when I look at my former graduate students and just see how much they've done, how they've just taken off and expanded it and gone way beyond anything that that Art and I did together is really incredible. We never thought that, this could happen, and we are so glad that it did. So that's really my source of pride.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I mean, it's so massive. Yeah, and your Final Negotiations book, I read that. Was it 1995 you published that?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
that was the year of my PhD, and it was late for my doctoral studies, which we had no guidance at all. We literally had no guidance. We just had to go and find a way. But I ended up doing what I now look back on and think of as narrative inquiry, and I'd never heard of such a thing in those days. But it was kind of did. But your book, Final Negotiations, where you could, you did what you did in writing that story of your life, and yeah, that really changed something in me, because it was like, you can tell people what happened to you, and it matters, and they're going to be interested. I was so interested in your process through that time. And of course, now I understand it from my point of view, being the carer, as you were in that book. Yeah, it taught me a lot on all sorts of different levels. Yes, and I really thank you for that, and for the whole of the autoethnographic community that you've grown.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And then just, knowing you were there doing the work that you were doing in the UK. And I remember you invited me to come visit, and I got to meet you and your husband, David. And it was just a wonderful connection. I mean, it made it real that there were people in other places doing this kind of work and thinking these kinds of things. So I really appreciate our connection very much.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you would like to say about your life, your career?
Oh, well, I can always talk, but it's usually difficult finding enough time to shut me up, isn't it, Katrina?
Well, we can see if anybody wants to join in and ask questions, make comments. Just say thank you to Kim for the work she's done, all the mentoring that she has done. Just join in.
I say something.
Excuse me 1 second. My dog is eating a cord. Hey. No. An electric cord.
Hi, Kim and Carolyn. I just want to say that's a really wonderful conversation. And of course, I know and love both of you. And I found both of your books and your personal counsel to me really generous and helpful in the work that David and I have been doing. And because I know both of you, I know you had quite a difficult time in how you were let go from your universities. And it seems now that you are flourishing, but an awful lot of people are experiencing, certainly in the UK and I believe in America too, a really difficult time at their universities. So I just wondered what thoughts and encouragement you will have people going through similar things. Could you both say a little bit about that?
Yes, I guess we forgot that question, Kim.
Well, it's a surprise to me, because I didn't think I did have a difficult time, actually.
Well,
But
what I meant was, I remember you saying you'd only just got started and suddenly the university were telling you had to retire.
well, I
And
was 60,
Yes.
No, that was more about the regret, was more about the fact that it had taken me so long to get going. I've thought that so many times, that if I'd done, I mean, I look at the young people now here, in this forum, and I just think it's wonderful that people can step off and step out there and be in the world so young. Well, they probably don't think they're so young, but they really are so young. And my regret is it took me a long time to get to the point where I kind of woke up, you know, and started to find myself. It did take a long time. And yes, so I'd only just got going, you know, I'd been employed as any kind of academic for only 15 years. But, you know, I ended up getting a chair, which really surprised nobody more than me, you know, in that space of time, part-time for 15 years. And I knew I had more to give, and I have given more, you know. I've gone on doing as Carolyn has, you know, for 15 years, and I'm not done yet. So it wasn't about the way, it was about the timing. And, you know, 4 years later, we had to move away from Bristol because of Dave's ill health. So it was the right time, as it turned out. But I know that was different for you, Carolyn.
Yes, well, when we retired, you know, there was a rupture in the department. I mean, we'd had a thriving qualitative autoethnography narrative program for more than 20 years, and there was a rupture with some people wanting to, you know, change the direction, and that was hurtful after what we had contributed and how, I mean, we were very much engaged with the department. It really was our life at the time. But, you know, the way I put that together now is to say, you know, we had a fantastic run of 25 years, and most programs don't last that long. And it's just inevitable. I mean, social change is inevitable. And so I look back at it more at what we accomplished than, you know, thinking about how it didn't continue in the same way. I mean, they still do some autoethnography, but it didn't continue in the same way as it had when Art and I were there. And, you know, in some ways it freed me not having that connection. My dog is insisting on eating cords. In some ways, not having that connection now, that obligation really frees me to put my energy into other arenas, which has been very rewarding for me. And so I'm very thankful for that. And in terms of, you know, what can I tell people who are having problems in academia? Well, you know, most departments are dysfunctional families. I think coming to terms with that, seeing them as that, you know, might in some ways be helpful. I mean, how do you deal with a dysfunctional family? How do you deal with your role in it? How do you see the structure and what it does to you? But at the same time, how do you see your role in interaction with other people? And is there anything that you can do to make it better? There are things I would have done different if I would go back. But, you know, that's kind of life. And I don't want to spend my life looking backwards. I really want to spend my life looking forward. And so do the best you can in departments is all I can say. And don't take it, you know, pick your battles and don't take everything personally. And, you know, withdraw when you have to and come and be passionate about the things that you really care about.
I do think one of my saving graces was actually the fact that I wasn't a full-time academic. You know, they barely paid me enough time to teach, let alone do anything else. So when I was asked to join committees and things like that, I would just say, I'm sorry, you know, my program doesn't allow for that. And so I managed to stay out of a lot of that. I saw it going on around me, but yeah, I was somebody in the program, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who, was talking about, you know, that she'd left one dysfunctional family who she'd severed her connection with, and then she joined another one by becoming an academic. So I thought, oh yes, that rings a bell. But I think not being fully engaged with all aspects of it was probably the best for me.
Yeah. And as I was doing my career in university, I didn't do that much with university committees, university politics, because I felt like you really had to pick and choose somewhere. You couldn't do it all. I mean, so I did what I had to do, or I did a few things that I felt really strongly about, but I kept my distance. And I think you're right, not being, full time kept you out of some of that. And that can be a killer because university politics and committees can just take you over, as can department committees.
Yeah.
Larry, go ahead.
Andrew nodding.
Yes, I see. Yes.
Some
Larry.
people put their hands up.
Yeah, Larry, you want to speak?
Yes, hello. Well, first, thank you both to Carolyn and to Kim for a very, very touching and inspiring conversation. I have a very basic question, but I thought I have to ask this question. I am conducting my PhD studies here in Sweden at Lund University. And because you come from different geographies in the world, and it's my first time participating in a conference about autoethnography, and it's an eye-opening experience because here in Europe or in Scandinavia, I would say, autoethnography, I see among my PhD colleagues, it's not a very a method that it's being widely used. And I feel now looking at the United States, there is a huge. There are so many people here, for example, today, and there's so many books written about that. And actually, that was the reason because I came to participate in this symposium because I feel that I need some peers, I need partners in using autoethnography. So my question is basically, if you, Kim, could say a little bit about the use of autoethnography in the UK. I know it's very general, but what you can say about that, and if Carolyn if you can compare this for me to understand better, what can I do here in Scandinavia? Thank you.
Well, we have here Katrina, who spoke up earlier, who has been running a conference every year in Bristol, an autoethnographic conference. And people from all over the world come to that. It's kind of very intimate, kind of special. I think it takes place over about 2 or 3 days. 3. Thanks, Katrina. Have a look at the Boomerang Project, and you'll find some information there about it. And then one of our students at Bristol, from a long time ago, who is now a professor in Edinburgh, has opened a centre up there where he does a lot of Jonathan Wyatt that most of you will have heard of too. But there's not enough. It's very difficult to find, because I get a lot of people coming and saying, who can be my supervisor? Who can I go to? And I have a job. I really have a job to find the people to fill the needs of those that are seeking that kind of support. It's growing very slowly because of the growth of programs that are bringing up people to take on those roles. But in Bristol, we had a Centre for Narratives and Transformative Learning. And that, unfortunately, with the passage of time and people leaving, is no longer active. But things have come in to fill those gaps, as I say, with Katrina's program, for instance. But there isn't enough.
Yes, good question and good issue. Autoethnography really is exploding all over the world. I mean, I can tell from the emails I get from everybody, and I can tell from having a day in Japanese and Polish and Spanish, and I know with the Japanese sessions were really fully attended. I don't know about the others because I didn't see them, but there is really an interest, and there are a lot of people doing it, but there aren't any real focused programs of research in autoethnography and narrative. but there's some that have several members of faculty members who are working in those areas. But there are all these organizations. So the one that Katrina's organization, and also IANI, this one, if you go to the website, Tony really tries to keep up on the website, everything that's going on, you know, and I would say attend conferences like this, attend in person if you can, you know, meet people. And most of us who've been doing this for a long time are very open to, you know, having you contact us and try to get information. And, you know, we can at least try to connect you to somebody who might be helpful, who might be an external reviewer or a person who's doing the kind of work that you're doing. That to me is part of the autoethnographic community, is that we are very supportive and caring, and we try to be there for other people, especially for people who are new in the area. So, you know, send those emails, you know, reach out, and I can almost guarantee that you will get some kind of response, even if it's, you know, I can't do this right now, but here's somebody else you might contact.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. Okay, Jen.
Carolyn, and Kim as well. Thank you. It was really it was wonderful to hear both of you. I'm a PhD student, age 43 nearly, so hearing how your careers have panned. One thing that I was interested in, obviously, Carolyn, you said that you visited Kim in the UK, and it sounded like that was a personal visit. Do you feel that even though it was perhaps harder to contact colleagues internationally, that it was still more personal? Because that's kind of like the first time I've heard about people visiting, almost like almost going on holiday and visiting somebody in a different country, and it was lovely. But I wonder if technology has, in bringing us closer together, made it less likely that we do engage personally in that way. And I just wondered if either of you had any thoughts on that.
I think that's true. I mean, Art and I did workshops and lectures, and I think it was like 15 different countries. And we don't get that many invitations anymore. And I wasn't sure if it was because of our age, or because of lack of funds, or because of technology that we can meet like this, and so people are less likely to invite you, you know, or some combination of those reasons. But those personal visits were amazing and are amazing. We are hopefully going to the UK in September to speak at a university. There's just nothing that can replace them, really. And I feel that same way about workshops. You know, we did workshops at Norm Denson's conference for every year that he had the conference, and in person was just so much more rewarding for us and for participants than the online conferences. But I think, you know, and again, I know people have limited funds and universities have limited funds, but I do think we need to get together anytime that we can. Although it's, you know, it takes a lot of resources.
I think it's something to do with the nature of autoethnography, Jen. You know, we write so personally, and, you know, because we're the kind of people who write so personally, we love other people to read it and to have a conversation about it. And so actually that visit that Carolyn made to my home, well, she was actually invited to do a workshop in Brighton at the time. And I attended that, and I knew Carolyn not very well, but, you know, I'd written to her about her work. I'd passed other people. I think I introduced Katrina to her. You know, there were lots of links that were built up. And so, you know, my instinct was to say, come and stay. And she said, show me the way. And so, you know, it's about the personal. It's about meeting and hearts and minds, really. You know, this thing that we're recognizing, it's a community. This is a community. And so people behave as though they're in a community and relate in that way.
Yes, and in January 2026, we are having an autoethnography conference right where Art and I live. It's a little town called Safety Harbor, Florida. It's 15 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico, and it's a mile from, or it's right on the bay in Tampa Bay. And it's a really nice resort with, massage and all kinds of facials and, you name it, whatever you need during breaks. And it's a lovely little artistic town with good restaurants. And so, look on the website, the ISAN website, and if you can come, we would love to have you.
I am planning on applying. It's something that my tutors, my supervisors are supportive, so fingers crossed.
Good, good.
Where,
Go ahead.
where are you, Jen?
I don't think I'm that far from you. I'm based in Derbyshire.
Oh, you're very close by where I live.
Yeah.
I'm in Melton Mowbray.
Yeah, no, I know very well. I'm from the Midlands originally, so yes, very close. It's one county line across for anybody that's not local.
Yeah. I thought you sounded as if you might be in this neck of the woods.
Yeah, Birmingham originally.
Had to ask.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
All right, we have time for one more question. Natasha.
Hi everybody. I'm actually from Ireland. I don't know if we have anybody else from Ireland. It's lovely to hear. Oh, really, Kim? You're from Ireland? Yeah.
Well, my parents were Irish.
Oh, really? Brilliant, brilliant. I'm very new to autoethnography and completely starstruck on this call. I am a careers advisor by profession, and I did my master's last year, and that's where I first met autoethnography and absolutely fell in love with it straight away. It was one of those things where I went, I can't believe that this exists and that I have never met it before. And one of the first articles I read was yours, Carolyn. It was Heartful Autoethnography, where you're talking, and my background is psychology. So it's where you were talking to the psychology student and the this side and that side and the paradigms. And it was like you were actually talking to me. And from there, I just got sucked completely into it. And I would love to do my PhD in it sooner rather than later. And Kim, when you were talking there and talking about when you were 55 and getting up and getting your doctorate, and I'm 51 now, so please God, if that, if in a few years time, if I could make that happen, that would actually be my dream come true. So it was hearing you talk about your stories, it was actually so inspiring. So I just want to say thank you. It's really, really kind of affirming to me that it's not too late. And even though I came to all this late, that there's still a lot of stories to be told and a lot to be made from the story. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. What a lovely way to end the session. Kim, this has been just amazing. We have to continue this discussion because there's so much more to say. And thanks to everyone for attending, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
And thank you, Caroline.